I watched the Attack on Titan original video animation, Ilse's Notebook. Is that how you pronounce that? Is it Ilse, or Ilse, or Ilse, or Ilse? I'm gonna say Ilse. I don't know if that's right or not, but it's what it is. But I did find some interesting stuff in this OVA, so let's get to it. One thing I think is kind of cool about this story, or this episode, or this OVA, is that it's a story that takes place on two different timelines. Some of the story we see firsthand, and then some of it we get secondhand. We get this part of the story, the secondhand part of the story, courtesy of a diary or a notebook that was discovered. But at the core of the framing story is Hanji's desire to capture and study Titans. And of course that's something we've seen her do in Season 1, but this is before we get to see that in Season 1, at least when this is set. This is labeled as if it were Episode 3.5, which I assume means it falls somewhere between Episode 3 and Episode 4. But within this framing story is what I think constitutes the real story of the OVA. And that's Ilse's story, as told in her notebook, of course. And we're also told that Ilse's story happens about 5 years before the framing story. So, we get an idea of roughly how much time has passed by kind of knowing where Hanji and Levi and Erwin are in their part of the framing story. I don't really do detailed recaps, but I'm going to give a really brief summary just for context, so I can talk about the things that I find interesting. And I also have a few thoughts, a few questions, and even a couple of what-ifs. But the story is, the Survey Corps are going out and Hanji wants to capture a Titan to study. Erwin, Levi, Mike, pretty much everybody says, no, you can't do that, that's a bad idea, it's not worth the risk. So she gives up on her dream of capturing a Titan and experimenting on it and torturing it and stabbing it in the eye and giving it names like Sonny and Bean. And she goes out and does the regular expedition stuff. And while they're out on this expedition, the squad discovers an oddly positioned body of a past Survey Corps member. And when I say oddly positioned, it's like in this big hole in a tree, kind of sitting upright. Almost like it means to be there, except it doesn't have a head. And they also discover like a journal or a diary, or as the title says, a notebook. And it's this notebook that tells the story of the last days of this person who they found, the Ilse of the title, during an ill-fated expedition. So in this notebook, she records meeting a Titan that could talk. Hanji gives the notebook to Erwin, and after reading what's in the notebook, Erwin allows Hanji to go catch a Titan on the next expedition. That's it in a nutshell. Plenty of details left out, but that's the gist of it. So to me, the centerpiece of the story is this Titan that can talk. And when I say he can talk, he seems to have like a rudimentary language ability. I mean, this guy's not going to challenge Eminem to a rap battle or anything. He's not reciting poems on the quad at a college. He just has some simple verbal skills. I'd say it's kind of like Iron Giant level of speech. And who knows, if they ever do like an English dub of this OVA, maybe they can get Vin Diesel to be the voice of this talking Titan. So before I get into what the Titan said, I have to wrap my head around the whole concept that this Titan can talk, and ask myself, like, why in the world is this Titan able to talk? Also, it's one of what I call toddler Titans, and I call them toddler Titans because they're only like 3 or 4 meters tall, which is short for a Titan, but they have like a disproportionately large head, kind of like my kids did when they were learning to walk, and they're kind of top heavy. And I've seen a few of these toddler Titans now, and they always kind of seem like the creepiest of the Titans to me. Maybe that's my own personal thing, my own issue. But despite looking like a toddler, maybe this talking Titan is actually one of the oldest Titans. Like maybe this is a G1 Titan and that's why it can kind of talk. And like maybe these OG Titans were made by experimenting on humans, so since it's smaller, maybe it retained just a touch of its humanity, just a trace of speaking ability. And maybe this Titan that can speak was like sort of a rough draft, and like the people who can transform into Titans now, people like Eren, well, they're sort of the final form on this Titan R&D progression. I just don't know why one Titan would be able to talk, but none of the others would be. But honestly, in its simplest form, you break it all down to the basics, I guess there can only be 2 reasons. Either it was on purpose, or it's an accident. That doesn't really narrow it down, does it? But if it was an accident, well, that would probably be because the Titan creation was still raw and unrefined, which makes me think this is probably a particularly old Titan. And since it's kind of small and awkward, it's probably a lucky Titan too to have made it so long without being killed. And maybe speech was like an unnecessary bug in the system that worked itself out over time. But what if it's on purpose? Like, why would someone or something or some organization want a verbal Titan? Well, maybe it's to serve the same purpose as Ilse's notebook. Like, maybe it's a feature to allow some aspect of the Titan experience to be chronicled and passed on. But is it to be passed on to Titans or to be passed on to humans? Well, I'm going to say probably both. It's probably to maybe provide some kind of insight to the folks like Aaron and Annie, who have one foot in the human world and one much larger foot in the Titan world. I think my point is, regardless of the reason, there are interesting possibilities. I don't feel like I have enough information to come up with a singular theory, but I can position my head to go to work in either direction if or when we get more information or more information about the talking Titan is revealed. I really feel like this Titan has some kind of bridge to humanity or some kind of connection to humanity, and it's distressed by its Titan instinct to kill humans. It also seems to have like some kind of reverence for humans. And I'm thinking maybe this is a reverence for its creator. At one point this Titan gets so distressed that it seems to mutilate its own face, like ripping its own skin off its face. And this was a particularly horrific moment and image for me. I think Ilse chastises the Titan for eating humans for no reason, and that's what triggers this whole face-ripping distress. And also, chastising the Titan, well, that was probably a bad move because the toddler Titan proceeded to chomp Ilse's head off. And I'll come back around to that in a minute, but it's pretty remarkable the way she just keeps writing in her notebook right up until that final chomp is complete. Like, personally, I always preferred multiple choice tests, but Ilse, she seems kind of like the person who would really be into essay questions. Now, as to what the Titan says, this may be the crucial clue or bit of information here in this OVA, so let's consider it. The Titan uses the name Ymir, and I think he refers to Ilse as a subject or follower of Ymir. I admit, I watched a fan sub I found on YouTube for this one. It wasn't available on my primary streaming services, so the translation might not be right on. But I think the Titan also calls her Ymir Sama, or Lady Ymir, at some point, or a couple of times actually. So I have to ask, who is Ymir? But more specifically, I'm curious, is Ymir a person or is Ymir a title? Or could Ymir be a philosophy? I think the most obvious conclusion to draw is that Ymir is the mad scientist who created the Titans in the first place. And he's probably Hanji's great-grandfather, and she got that mad scientist gene from great-grandpa Ymir. But also, maybe Ymir is a title, like a king or a general or a minister or something. Maybe Ymir is who the Titans were created to destroy or to protect something from. And you know, the Titan kills Ilse, but it also seems to have a measure of reverence for her. You know, like the way it talks to her when it could have just went straight for the kill. And then the way it positions her body once she's dead seems to suggest reverence to me. Or at least respect. So, is Ilse the first human this Titan's ever seen? He sort of seems shaken up by the meeting, or at least it's the first that this Titan has ever seen since the Titan was turned from human to Titan, which I kind of think's probably what happened, but I don't know. For some reason, it just feels kind of unlikely that this Titan has never encountered a human before. I do feel pretty solid that I will get to find out who or what Ymir is before the show's over with and everything's all said and done, but I might have to wait a while. I don't know. Now here's where I introduce my trickery or tomfoolery or maybe cynicism into the discussion. Because what if we have an unreliable narrator at some point along this story? And I have 2 ideas for where that could happen, or maybe 3. But let's start with Ilse. It does seem like it might be difficult to document everything she seems to document in her notebook under the circumstances she reports. And look, I'm not claiming to know everything, but I bet none of you are able to write legibly in a notebook while a giant's chomping your head off. And even if I could do that, I would just write, "Oh crap, oh crap, oh crap." Heck, a significant number of people in my reaction video comments, well, they don't even think I can talk and read subtitles at the same time. And that's way easier than writing while you're being murdered by a monster. So, Ilse was out in the elements. She was suffering from exposure and starvation and any number of other conditions. I think it'd be totally understandable that she might start to hallucinate. Heck, maybe she got so hungry she ate some berries that sent her on a really bad trip, like hallucinogenic berries. And she went on a talking titan trip, which happens to be the worst kind of trip. And while she's tripping, or while she's hallucinating, she climbed into a tree to seek shelter. She thought it was all real, so she wrote it in her notebook about some chatty titan that wasn't really there, and then some regular old titan just came along and chomped her head off. I'm not saying that's what happened, just something you can bounce around in your head if you want to add a level of difficulty to the uneven bars routine that is Attack on Titan. Now, how about this for a possibility? We know that Hanji really wanted to get a pet titan pretty badly. And we know deception is something that happens in Attack on Titan. And my gut tells me Hanji's so obsessed with her knowledge seeking that she might go into some morally questionable techniques to gain knowledge. What if Hanji forged the whole notebook? What if Hanji found a headless body just lying around, she waited until nobody was looking, and she shoved it into a tree hole? And then she says, hey, look at this notebook. And next thing you know, she's allowed to catch titans. Again, I don't think that's likely, but Hanji kind of scares me. So I'm expecting something sinister from her. And it's always possible somebody else set this up, like maybe Grisha, or Armin's mom. Not really Armin's mom, I just think it's funny that out of the blue I thought maybe the female titan was Armin's mom, when for all I know, Armin doesn't even have a mom, like maybe they just found him in a pumpkin patch. So for the sake of argument, let's say Grisha can't openly tell people about the Titan secrets. So he plants some clues, and then he hopes in a few years these clues will get to Armin and he'll figure it all out. Of course, the most likely answer is that there really was a talking Titan, and all this really happened. But if for whatever reason you don't like that, I've given you some fan theories you can have a little fun with. But overall, I like this OVA. I think it introduced a little more mystery, a few more clues, and we got to see a talking Titan. Maybe the next one will have a singing Titan. I think it'd be great if it was like one of those really big guys that had a high-pitched voice. Probably won't happen, but a guy can dream. I'm going to try to catch some more stuff, and I'll talk to you later.